The gavel slammed down like a gunshot, and Lena Cartwright's life became worth $20. She was 17 years old, standing barefoot on splintered wood with chains cutting into her wrists, and the man who bought her wore guilt like a second skin. When she looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much and whispered, "You paid for me, now do it," Grant McCade felt his soul crack open. Because 8 years ago he'd bandaged that same scarred wrist when she was just a child. Before we begin, please subscribe to our channel and stay with us until the very end of this story. Comment below which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's begin. Grant McCade hadn't planned on going to the auction that day. He'd been in town for supplies, flour, salt, horseshoe nails, the kind of mundane things that keep a man's ranch running and his mind occupied. But as he tied his horse outside Barlow's general store, he heard voices drifting from the old tobacco barn at the edge of town. Old Barlow spat tobacco juice into the dust. Another one. Sheriff's got his fingers in everything these days. Grant's jaw tightened. Debt auctions. Girls and boys sold off to settle family obligations. Legal on paper, rotten to the core. He should have walked away. Instead, his boots carried him toward that barn. Inside, 30 men stood around a makeshift platform. The air reeked of sweat and something darker, the particular stench of men about to buy another human being and call it business. On the platform stood a girl. Grant's breath stopped. She was thin, painfully thin, with dark hair hanging in tangled waves past her shoulders. Her dress was rags. Her feet were bare and filthy. But her eyes destroyed him. They were hollow, empty, like someone had reached inside and scooped out her soul. The auctioneer, a weasel-faced man named Pike, was mid-pitch. "Strong worker, this one. Can cook, clean, mend. Family debt of $43 needs settling. Do I hear 15? Silence. Grant scanned the crowd. Farmers, ranchers, shopkeepers, men who claimed goodness on Sundays. Not one of them looked at the girl like she was human. They were calculating, measuring, deciding if she was worth the investment. "Come now, gentlemen," Pike's voice turned oily. "Girl's got years of work in her, $15, and she's yours. Legal and proper." More silence. The girl swayed. Grant saw the chains, then iron manacles circling her wrists, connected by a short length that allowed movement but never freedom. And then he saw it. On her left wrist, just above the manacle, was a scar, white, raised, shaped like a crescent moon. Grant's vision narrowed. Suddenly he was back 8 years, kneeling in dirt, beside a burning farmhouse, wrapping cloth around a 9-year-old girl's bleeding wrist, while her mother screamed inside the flames. No, it couldn't be. $10? Pike's voice cracked with desperation. Surely someone. 20. The word erupted from Grant's mouth before thought could stop it. Every head turned. Pike's eyebrows shot up. $20. Well now, Mr. McCade, that's generous. Going once. Wait. Sheriff Dalton stepped from the shadows, his silver badge catching light. 6'3", shoulders like an ox, eyes like flint chips. "McCade, you sure you want to get involved in this?" Grant met his gaze without flinching. "I said 20. Just seems odd." Dalton smiled, predatory. "Lonely old rancher buying a young girl. People might talk." "People already talk, Sheriff. The only odd thing here is you running an auction that shouldn't exist in a country that fought a war to end this business. This is debt settlement, McCade. Legal and proper. Her daddy owed money he couldn't pay. Her daddy, Robert Cartwright. Ring any bells?" The name hit like a fist. Robert Cartwright, the man Grant's father had betrayed, the man whose farm burned while Grant stood by and did nothing. "Go in twice." Pike sensed the tension. "Sold to Grant McCade for $20. The gavel came down. Grant forced his legs to move. Up close, the girl was more heartbreaking. Pale skin beneath dirt, bruises on her arms old and fresh. but the emptiness in her eyes wounded him most. "Here you are, sir." Pike handed him a key and folded paper. "Bill of sale. She's your responsibility now." Grant took the key, left the paper on the platform. "I don't need that. But the law requires, the law can go to hell." He climbed onto the platform. The girl didn't move, didn't acknowledge him. She stared straight ahead, seeing nothing. "I'm going to unlock these." Grant kept his voice soft. "Then we're walking out of here. Can you do that?" No response. He slid the key into the first manacle. The lock clicked. Iron fell away. He did the same with the second. Her hands dropped to her sides, but she remained frozen. "Come on." Grant offered his hand. She looked at his hand like it might bite. Then slowly, mechanically, she reached out. Her fingers were ice. They walked through the silent crowd. Grant felt every timid judging, speculating, condemning. Let them look. He'd been condemned by better men. Outside sunlight slammed into them. The girl squinted, raising one hand to shield her eyes. Grant noticed the raw skin where the manacles had been. "My horse is over here." He guided her toward his bay gelding. "About an hour's ride to my ranch. You'll be safe there." She stopped walking. For the first time, she looked directly at him. Something flickered in those dead eyes. Not hope. Something harder. Safe. She repeated the word like it was foreign. "You paid $20 for me. I paid to get you out of there. You paid." She stepped closer. He smelled desperation on her. "You own me now. That's how this works." "No, that's not. You paid for me." Her voice dropped to a whisper, terrible and resigned. "So do it. Get it over with. Because I know what men do with girls they buy, and I'm tired of waiting for it." Grant felt punched. "Lena." Her eyes widened. "How do you know my name?" He wanted to tell her everything. About the fire, his father's betrayal, the guilt eating him alive for 8 years. But the words tangled. "We need to go." She laughed, breaking glass. "Of course, can't do it here in the street. Need privacy." "That's not..." Grant stopped, breathed. "I'm not going to hurt you. Everyone hurts me. You just paid more for the privilege." She reached for his hand again. Not submission. "Challenge. A dare. Show me what kind of monster you really are." Grant pulled back like he'd been burned. "Get on the horse." "Yes, sir." Her voice died again. The ride back was torture. Lena sat behind him, body rigid, never touching him, unless the horse's movement forced contact. Grant felt tension radiating off her like heat. He tried talking, asked if she was hungry, thirsty, if she remembered him from that night. She answered with silence. The sun was setting when they reached his land. Grant's ranch wasn't much. A small cabin, a barn, a corral with 3 horses and a milk cow. 200 acres of Texas scrubland he'd bought with his father's blood money. He dismounted and helped Lena down. She stood in his yard, staring at the cabin like it was a gallows. "Come inside, I'll make food." She followed him in. Her eyes scanned the single room. 1 bed in the corner, fireplace, table with 2 chairs, shelves lined with books, windows needing washing. "Sit down." Grant gestured to a chair. Lena remained standing. "Where do you want me?" "I want you to sit down and..." "No." Her voice sharpened. "Where do you want me? The bed, the floor, against the wall. I need to know the rules." Grant's heart cracked. There are no rules like that. Every place has rules. Not here. He moved to the fireplace, started building a fire, needed something to do with his hands. "You sleep in the bed. I'll take the floor." "That's not how this works." "That's how it works here." He struck flint. Spark caught kindling. "You're not my property, Lena. I didn't buy you to own you." "Then why did you buy me?" The question hung between them. Grant straightened, turned to face her. "Because I owed your father a debt I can never repay. And because I've spent 8 years trying to figure out how to live with what I did and didn't do the night your family's farm burned." Lena's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. "You were there." "I was there? And you did nothing." "I tried." "You did nothing." Her voice rose, ice cracking. "My mother died in that fire. My little brother died. My father spent five years drinking himself to death because he lost everything. and you did nothing. You're right. The admission threw her. She'd been building toward rage, toward explosion, and Grant deflated it by agreeing. I did nothing. His voice stayed quiet. I was 28 years old, and I stood in that field and watched your home burn because my father told me to. He said the Cartwrights were traitors, and this was justice. And I believed him because it was easier than believing I was watching an innocent family die. Lena's hands clenched into fists. And now you think buying me makes it better? No, I think buying you kept you from being sold to someone worse. There is no one worse than you. The words should have hurt. Maybe they did, but Grant just nodded. You're probably right. But you're here now, and I'm not going to let anyone hurt you again, not while I'm alive. How noble. Spit and venom. The guilty man plays hero. I'm not playing anything, I'm telling you the truth. Lena stared at him, then she crossed to the bed, grabbed the thin pillow, and threw it on the floor by the door. I'll sleep here. Lena, if you touch me, I'll kill you in your sleep. She said it like commenting on weather. Then she lay down, curled up with her back to him, and went silent. Grant stood there watching her small form shake with sobs. She didn't want him to hear. He wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would be okay, but those were empty words. Nothing was okay. Nothing had been okay for 8 years. He sat in his chair by the fire and kept watch through the night, making sure the demons stayed outside where they belonged. Days crawled by. Lena moved through the cabin like a ghost doing chores without being asked. She swept, cooked, mended his torn shirt. She never spoke unless spoken to, and even then, her answers were clipped. She still slept on the floor by the door. Grant tried giving her space, tried showing through actions what words couldn't convey. He never touched her without warning, never raised his voice, left food where she could reach it, made sure she ate before he did, but the wall between them was built from 8 years of pain. On the third morning, Grant woke to find her already outside hauling water from the well. He watched through the window as she struggled with the bucket, thin arms shaking. She was determined, stubborn. She'd haul that bucket if it killed her. He went outside. Let me help. I can do it. I know you can, but you don't have to. She glared at him. I have to earn my keep. You don't. Yes, I do. The words exploded. Because if I'm not useful, you'll send me back, or worse. So I'll work, and I'll keep working until you're satisfied or I'm dead. Those are my only 2 options. Grant set down his bucket. What if there was a third option? There isn't. What if you could just be? No earning, no proving, just existing here until you figure out what you want to do next. Lena laughed bitterly. What I want, nobody cares what I want. I do. Why? She stepped closer, eyes blazing. Why do you care? Is it guilt? You need to save me to feel better about watching my family burn. Maybe. Grant's admission was raw, but that doesn't make your freedom any less real. The fight drained from her. She picked up the bucket, carried it toward the cabin, water sloshing over the sides. That afternoon, Grant was mending fence when he noticed Lena standing in the cabin doorway, staring at something inside. He walked over, found her in front of his bookshelf, one hand hovering over the spines like she was afraid to touch them. You can read them if you want. She jerked her hand back. I wasn't. It's fine, they're just sitting there gathering dust anyway. Lena's fingers drifted back to a slim volume. Poetry. Byron. My mother used to read poetry to us before everything. She pulled the book out carefully like it might shatter. She had a whole shelf of books. They burned with the house. Grant's chest tightened. I keep that one if you want. I can't. Yes, you can. Consider it payment for all the work you're doing that I keep telling you not to do. She almost smiled. Almost. Then she clutched the book to her chest and disappeared outside. That evening, Grant found her sitting on the porch steps, the book open and in her lap. Her lips moved silently as she read, and for the first time since the auction, she looked young. Looked like the girl she should have been. He didn't interrupt, just watched from the window as twilight settled over the land. On the 5th day, 3 riders appeared on the horizon. Grant was fixing fence when he saw them. His gut tightened. Visitors were rare, and these men rode like they had business the bad kind. "Lena," he called toward the cabin. "Get inside, now." She appeared in the doorway, saw the riders, went pale. "It's the sheriff." Grant's hand moved toward the rifle, leaning against the fence post. Didn't pick it up, not yet. But he wanted it close. The riders pulled up 20 feet away. Sheriff Dalton sat in the middle, flanked by 2 deputies Grant didn't recognize. Young men with hard eyes and hands resting too casually near their guns. "McCade," Dalton tipped his hat in mock politeness. "Nice day for fence work." "What do you want, Sheriff?" "Just checking on your purchase, making sure everything's legal and proper." "She's fine." "That's so." Dalton's eyes drifted toward the cabin where Lena stood frozen. "Girl, you being treated right?" Lena didn't answer. "Speak up now." Dalton's voice oozed false concern. "If McCade here is mistreating you, the law can intervene." "The law sold her in the first place." Grant's voice went cold. Dalton's smile hardened. "Careful, McCade. That kind of talk sounds like criticism of official county business." "Take it however you want." The sheriff leaned forward in his saddle. "You know what I think. I think you've gone soft. Buying girls, playing the hero. Your daddy would be ashamed. My daddy was a bastard who ruined good people for profit. If he'd be ashamed of me, I'm doing something right." One of the deputies reached for his gun. Dalton raised a hand, stopping him. "Bam. Easy now. McCade's just upset. Happens when a man gets lonely enough to buy company. I paid for her freedom." Grant's voice dropped dangerously quiet. "Not her body. That what you tell yourself at night?" Dalton pulled a bullet from his pocket. Brass cartridge. He tossed it. The bullet landed on the fence post with a soft clink. "Just a reminder, McCade. Some ghosts don't stay buried. And that land your daddy stole from the Cartwrights still disputed, still owed. And some debts, they come due in ways you don't expect." He smiled wider. "That girl there, she's collateral on more than one debt. You might have paid $20, but her father owed $43. Math says she's still in the red. And when people can't pay their debts, well..." Dalton let the threat hang in the air. The 3 men turned their horses and rode off, leaving dust and menace in their wake. Grant stood there staring at the bullet until Lena's voice broke through. "They're coming back." He turned. She was closer now, arms wrapped around herself. "They'll say I ran away," her voice shook, "or that you stole me. They'll find an excuse to take me back and sell me again. That's what they do. That's what they always do. I won't let that happen. You can't stop them. You're one man, and Dalton owns this whole county." "Then we'll leave." "And go where?" Despair sharpened her words. "There's nowhere far enough. People like him have long reach." Grant picked up the bullet, felt its weight. "Your father was a good man." The subject changed through her. "What? Robert Cartwright. Good man, honest, fair. He lent my father money once when our cattle got sick, didn't charge interest, didn't demand collateral, just helped because it was right." "Then why did your father..." "Because my father wasn't a good man." Grant met her eyes. "After the war, he owed people, including Dalton. So when Dalton wanted your family's land, that bottom land by the creek, my father helped him get it. Spread lies about your father being a Confederate sympathizer, got people riled up, and then... The fire. The fire." Grant's throat tightened. "I was there that night because my father made me go. Said I needed to see what happened to traitors. But when I saw you, this little girl, with her wrist bleeding, screaming for your mother, I knew. I knew it was all lies. And I've carried that knowing every day since." Lena's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. "You bandaged my wrist. You remember." "I remember a man with sad eyes who said he was sorry. I was 9 years old, and my world was ending, and some stranger was apologizing. I didn't understand what he was sorry for. She paused, swallowed hard. Now I do. I should have done more. Yes. Simple. Final. You should have. Thunder rumbled in the distance. They stood in fading light, two people bound by tragedy and guilt, and something neither could name yet. The watch, Grant said suddenly. Did you keep your father's watch? Lena's hand moved to her pocket. Slowly, she pulled out a battered silver pocket watch, chain broken. She held it out. Grant saw the initials engraved on the back, R.C. He gave it to me the day before he died. Her whisper cracked. Said it was all he had left to give me, that and his name. Grant reached out but stopped short of touching it. May I? She hesitated, then placed it in his palm. He opened it. Inside was a photograph, a woman with kind eyes and a small boy grinning toothlessly. Your mother and brother. Sarah and Michael. Lena's voice broke. They're gone and I'm still here, and I don't know why. Because you're stronger than you know. I'm not strong, I'm just too stubborn to die. The first drops of rain began to fall fat and heavy. They ran for the cabin. By the time they got inside, they were soaked. Grant built up the fire while Lena stood dripping by the door, still clutching her father's watch. There's dry clothes in the chest. Grant didn't look at her. Help yourself. She didn't move for a long time. Then slowly she walked to the chest, pulled out one of his old shirts, and disappeared behind the hanging blanket he'd strung up for privacy. When she emerged, she looked younger, vulnerable. The oversized shirt hung past her knees. Wet hair clung to her face. Thank you. Quiet. Sincere. First time she'd thanked him for anything. They sat on opposite sides of the fireplace, not speaking, just listening to the storm rage outside. Rain pounded the roof like fists demanding entry. Lightning illuminated the cabin in brief, stark flashes. I used to love storms. Lena's voice was barely audible. Before everything. She hugged her knees to her chest. My mother used to make hot chocolate when it rained. We'd sit on the porch and watch the lightning. Michael would count the seconds between thunder and flash, trying to figure out how far away it was. Grant's chest ached. Sounds nice. It was perfect, and I didn't even know it. I thought we'd always be like that together, safe. And then one night, we weren't. Grant wanted to say something comforting. Every word felt inadequate. So he just sat there bearing witness. The worst part wasn't losing them. Lena's voice thickened. It was losing who I was, that girl who loved storms and believed in good people. She died in that fire too, and I don't know how to get her back. Maybe you don't. Grant kept his voice gentle. Maybe you become someone new, someone who survived what would have broken most people. Is that what you did, became someone new? I tried. Don't think I succeeded. Lena almost smiled. At least you're honest about it. Silence stretched between them, comfortable for the first time. Then Lena spoke again, softer now. After my father died, I had nowhere to go. The Hendersons took me in, said they'd give me a home. She paused. Grant waited. Mr. Henderson liked to come to my room at night, said I owed them for their kindness. Mrs. Henderson knew. She'd look at me in the morning like I was dirt she needed to sweep out. Grant's hands clenched into fists. Then the Parkers. They worked me 16 hours a day, fed me scraps, locked me in the cellar when I complained. Then the Coopers, then the Mitchells, each one worse than the last. And when I couldn't take any more, when I tried to run, the sheriff found me, said my father's debts were mine to pay, said I could work them off, or... She stopped, didn't finish. Or stand on that auction block. Grant finished for her. Yes. The fire crackled. Rain hammered the roof. The things they did to me. Lena's voice went hollow. The things I had to do to survive. You can't save me from those, Grant McCade. They're part of me now. Maybe I can't save you from the past. Grant leaned forward. But I can make sure your future is different. How? By giving you choices, by treating you like you matter, by assuaging your guilt. The accusation stung because it was partially true. By being the man I should have been 8 years ago. Lena studied him. Then she stood, walked to where he sat, and did something unexpected. She held out her father's pocket watch. "Here," Grant shook his head. "That's yours. I want you to hold it." Her voice steadied. "Not to keep, just to hold. Because if I'm going to survive you, this place, these memories, I need to trust someone. And right now, you're the only option I have." Grant took the watch, feeling the weight of her trust settle over him like a mantle. Fragile, conditional, could shatter at any moment. But real. "I won't let you down. You already did, 8 years ago, so don't make promises." Her eyes held his. "Just try." The storm raged through the night. Grant dozed in his chair, exhausted by confession's weight. When he woke near dawn, Lena was still by the fire, staring into flames. "You didn't sleep." "I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see things." "What things?" She looked at him. The emptiness was back, that terrible void. "The things that were done to me, the things I had to do." She turned back to the fire. "You can't save me from those. Maybe not from the past, but your future, my future." She laughed, harsh and broken. "My future is waiting to see when you'll stop pretending to be noble and take what you paid for, or waiting for the sheriff to drag me back, or waiting for the next man who thinks $20 buys him a person. That's all it's ever been." She stood abruptly. "I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of wondering. So tell me now, what do you want from me, really want?" Grant stood too. "I want you to have a life, a real one, where you make choices and no one owns you and you don't have to be afraid." "That's not possible." "Why not?" "Because people like me don't get happy endings. We just survive until we don't." "Then we'll change that." "You can't change anything. You're just one guilty man trying to buy his way into heaven." "Maybe." Grant's voice roughened. "But I'm the guilty man standing between you and everyone who wants to hurt you, and I'll keep standing there until you don't need me to anymore." Lena's face crumpled. For a moment, Grant thought she might cry. But she pulled herself back together, rebuilt her walls. "I can't forgive you. I'm not asking you to." "Good." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Because I won't. Not ever. What you did, what you didn't do, it killed my family. And no amount of noble gestures will change that." "I know. But," she hesitated, swallowed, "but maybe I can learn to live with you. Maybe that's the best either of us can hope for." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. Outside, the storm was passing. The rain softened to a gentle patter. The sky began to lighten, deep purple fading to gray. Lena looked at the chair Grant had been sitting in. Then slowly she walked over and sat down. She pulled a blanket around herself. "Tell me about the land," she said quietly. "The land Dalton wants." Grant settled back into his chair. "Your father's land, the bottom land by the creek. It's the most fertile in the county. Good water, good soil. My father and Dalton wanted it for years. When the war ended and your father came back, they saw their chance." "How?" "Dalton claimed your father owed back taxes he couldn't prove. My father backed him up, said your father had been a Confederate sympathizer. In those days, that was enough. They could take whatever they wanted from traitors. But my father fought for the Union. I know, but the truth didn't matter. What mattered was that Dalton wanted that land, and my father wanted Dalton's favor." Lena's jaw clenched. "So they killed my family for dirt?" "Yes. And now Dalton still wants it. The deed's in limbo. Your father's death left everything contested. Dalton's been trying to get the courts to rule in his favor for years. But there's one problem." "What?" Grant met her eyes. You're Robert Cartwright's heir. As long as you're alive, that land belongs to you." Understanding dawned on Lena's face. Horror followed. "That's why he sold me. He wanted me gone. He wanted you controlled, owned by someone he could intimidate, someone who'd keep you quiet. But you're not." "No." Grant's voice hardened. "I'm not." Lena pulled the blanket tighter. "He'll kill us both." "He'll try. You sound almost glad about it. I've been looking for a way to atone for 8 years. Dalton wants to take this fight to me. Good. Let him come. For the first time, Lena looked at Grant differently. Not with hate, not with fear, with something else, something like recognition. You're not just trying to save me, she said slowly. You're trying to finish what you didn't do 8 years ago. Maybe I'm trying to do both. She nodded slowly. Then, exhausted, she curled up in the chair and closed her eyes. Not on the floor this time. In the chair, like a person who belonged somewhere. Grant watched her sleep as dawn broke over the Texas plains. He turned the pocket watch over in his hands, feeling the engraved initials under his thumb. R.C. Robert Cartwright, a good man who died for dirt. Grant wouldn't let his daughter die for the same reason. Whatever came next, Dalton, the law, the whole damn county, Grant would face it. Because for the first time in 8 years, he had something worth fighting for. Not redemption, not forgiveness, but a second chance to do the right thing. And this time he wouldn't stand by and watch. This time he'd burn down anyone who tried to hurt her. Outside, the sun rose red and angry over the horizon, painting the world in shades of blood and fire. And in his chair, Lena Cartwright slept without nightmares for the first time in 8 years. The sun climbed higher, but Lena didn't wake. Grant let her sleep, moving quietly around the cabin as he prepared coffee and fried eggs. When the smell finally stirred her, she opened her eyes slowly, disoriented for a moment, before memory crashed back in. She sat up, touched her face like checking if she was real. You slept 4 hours, Grant said, setting a plate on the table. That's something. Lena stared at the food. I don't remember the last time I slept without... She stopped herself. Without what? Without keeping one eye open. Grant poured her coffee. Black, no sugar, they didn't have any. She wrapped her hands around the cup like it was precious. They ate in silence. Not the hostile silence of before, but something quieter, almost peaceful. When they finished, Lena stood and started clearing dishes. Grant stopped her with a hand on her wrist, gentle, careful not to touch the scar. You don't have to do that. Old habits. She pulled away, but not violently. I need to keep moving or I'll think too much. What do you think about? She looked at him, really looked at him. Everything, the fire, my father's face when he realized he'd lost everything, the men who... She stopped again. Everything. Grant nodded. Then let's give you something else to think about. Like what? Like learning to ride a horse properly, like fixing that fence that's been driving me crazy for a week, like figuring out what the hell we're going to do when Dalton comes back. When, not if, he'll be back. Men like him always come back. Lena set down the dishes. Then we should be ready. You said I own that land. That makes this my fight too. Grant felt something shift in his chest. Pride, maybe, or hope. You sure about that? No. Her voice was hard. But I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being afraid. And I'm tired of letting men like Dalton decide what happens to me. That could get you killed. I've been dying slowly for 8 years. At least this way, I get to choose how it happens. Grant studied her face, saw steel beneath the exhaustion, saw the girl who'd survived things that would have broken grown men. All right then, but we do this smart. First thing you need to know, how to shoot. Lena's eyes widened. A gun? You think Dalton's going to fight fair? You need to be able to protect yourself. I've never... Then it's time you learned. An hour later, they stood behind the barn with Grant's old Winchester rifle. Lena held it like it might explode. It's heavier than I thought. That's good, means it's real. Grant moved behind her, adjusting her stance. She stiffened at his proximity, and he immediately stepped back. Sorry, I need to show you how to hold it properly. Lena took a breath. It's fine, just warn me first. Always. He approached again, slower this time. Left hand here on the barrel, right hand on the stock. Butt of the rifle against your shoulder tight, or the recoil will knock you over. She followed his instructions, her movements jerky with nerves. See those cans on the fence? Grant pointed to 3 rusted tin cans he'd lined up 50 yards away. That's your target. Look down the sight. Line it up. Then squeeze, don't pull the trigger. What if I miss? Then you try again. That's how learning works. Lena aimed. Her hands shook. The rifle wavered. Breathe, Grant said softly. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Between breaths, that's when you shoot. She inhaled, exhaled. The rifle steadied slightly. The shot cracked through the air. The bullet kicked up dirt 5 feet to the left of the cans. Lena lowered the rifle. I missed. First shot always misses. Try again. She did. Second shot went high. Third shot went wide right. But the fourth clipped the edge of the leftmost can, sending it spinning. Lena's face lit up just for a second. Just long enough for Grant to see what she might look like if she wasn't carrying the weight of the world. I hit it. You did. Now do it again. They practiced until the sun was directly overhead, and Lena's shoulder was bruised from the recoil. She'd hit the can 6 times out of 20 shots. Not great, but better than nothing. You're a fast learner, Grant said as they walked back to the cabin. I had good teachers in survival. Her voice went flat. The Hendersons taught me to be invisible. The Parkers taught me to work through pain. The sheriff taught me that the law only protects people who can afford it. Grant's jaw clenched. And what am I teaching you? Lena looked at him. I don't know yet, but it's different than the others. That afternoon, while Lena rested inside, Grant rode into town. He needed information, needed to know what Dalton was planning. Barlow's general store was nearly empty when he walked in. Old Barlow looked up from his ledger, then quickly looked away. Afternoon, Mr. McCade. Barlow. Grant set his list on the counter. Need these supplies. Barlow gathered the items without meeting Grant's eyes. When he tallied the cost, his hands shook slightly. That'll be $3.40. Grant paid. You all right, Barlow? Fine, just been a strange week is all. Strange how? Barlow leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. Sheriff's been asking questions about you, about the girl. Says he's investigating whether the sale was proper. The sale he conducted himself. I know, don't make sense. But Dalton's got the mayor's ear, and the mayor's got debts to him. Word is they're looking for a reason to revoke the sale, take the girl back. Grant's blood went cold. On what grounds? Does it matter? They'll make something up. They always do. Barlow glanced toward the door nervously. Look, I'm just saying, maybe you should think about leaving, taking the girls somewhere far from here. I'm not running. Then you're a fool. Dalton doesn't lose McCade, not ever. Grant gathered his supplies. There's a first time for everything. Outside, he found Deputy Miller leaning against his horse, young, maybe 25, mean eyes and a badge he wore like a weapon. McCade, Sheriff wants to see you. I'm busy. Wasn't a request. Grant studied him, saw the gun on his hip, the way his hand hovered near it. Saw the eagerness in his eyes, the kind of eagerness that came from wanting to prove himself. Tell Dalton if he wants to talk, he knows where I live. Sheriff, don't come to you, you come to him. Then I guess we've got nothing to talk about. Grant moved to mount his horse. Miller's hand dropped to his gun. I said it wasn't a request. Grant stopped, turned slowly. You pull that gun, son, you better be ready to use it. And you better be damn sure you're faster than me. Miller's hand trembled. Grant could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, bravado warring with survival instinct. Thought so? Grant swung up into his saddle. Tell your boss I said hello. He rode out of town with eyes on his back the whole way. When he got home, Lena was waiting on the porch. She stood when she saw his face. What happened? Dalton's making his move. He's looking for an excuse to take you back. Lena's hands clenched. How long do we have? Don't know. Could be days, could be hours. Then we need a plan. They spent the rest of the afternoon fortifying the cabin. Grant boarded up one of the windows, leaving gun slots in the wood. He moved ammunition to strategic locations. filled buckets with water in case of fire. Lena watched, learning, helping where she could. "You've done this before," she observed. "War teaches you things, most of them unpleasant. You never talk about the war." Grant hammered another nail. "Not much to talk about. Saw men die. Killed men myself. Came home and found out the real war was right here, the one between people who had power and people who didn't. Which side were you on? The wrong one. Until now." As dusk fell, they sat on the porch steps. Grant cleaned his rifle while Lena held her father's pocket watch, turning it over and over in her hands. "My father used to say that revenge was a poison you drink, hoping the other person dies," she said quietly. "Smart man. But he also said that justice and revenge aren't always the same thing, and sometimes you have to fight for justice even when it looks like revenge." Grant glanced at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Dalton took everything from me, my family, my childhood, my safety, and now he wants to take the one thing I have left that land. It's just dirt, Lena." "No," her voice hardened. "It's my mother's grave, my brother's grave, my father's dreams. It's the last piece of proof that my family existed, that they mattered, and I won't let him have it. Even if it means dying for it. Especially then, because at least I'd die fighting instead of surrendering." Grant set down his rifle. "You remind me of your father. He had that same stubborn streak. Did you know him well? Well enough to know he was a better man than most. Better than me, certainly." Lena looked at the watch again. "He used to tell me stories about when he was young, about building the farm with his bare hands, about meeting my mother at a church social, about the day I was born during a thunderstorm." Her voice cracked. "He said I came into the world fighting, and I've been fighting ever since. Then let's make sure that fight means something." That night they took turns keeping watch. Grant took the first shift, sitting by the window, with his rifle across his knees. Lena tried to sleep in the chair, but he could hear her restlessness, the constant shifting, the small sounds of distress. Around midnight she gave up and joined him by the window. "Can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see the sheriff's face, hear his voice telling me I'm worth $43 of debt." Grant's hands tightened on his rifle. "What did he do to you, Lena, before the auction?" She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. "After my father died, I had nowhere to go. Dalton said he'd help me, said he'd find me a good home, people who'd take care of me. But first I had to work off my father's debts." She paused. Grant waited, giving her time. "He put me with families who needed workers, farm families mostly, told them I owed him so they could work me as hard as they wanted. And they did. Some were worse than others. The Hendersons, Mr. Henderson thought he owned more than just my labor." Grant's vision went red. "Did he? He tried. I fought him, broke his nose with a cast iron pan. That's when Mrs. Henderson decided I was too much trouble and sent me back to Dalton." "What did Dalton do?" "Beat me, said I was destroying property, his property, since I owed him. Then he sent me to the Parkers. They were worse in different ways. Worked me 16 hours a day, fed me scraps. When I collapsed from exhaustion, they locked me in the cellar for a week." Grant felt sick, and no one stopped them. Who would? Everyone owed Dalton something, and I was just a girl with a traitor's name trying to pay off debts she'd inherited. Your father wasn't a traitor. I know that, you know that, but everyone else believed the lies. Lena's voice went bitter. That's the thing about lies. If enough important people tell them, they become truth. Not anymore. We're going to set the record straight. How Dalton controls the courts. The mayor, half the ranchers in the county. Who's going to believe us? We'll find someone, and if we can't, we'll make so much noise they can't ignore us. Lena almost smiled. You really think you can fight the whole county? I think I can try. And trying is more than I've done for 8 years. They sat in companionable silence, watching the darkness beyond the windows. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Grant, yeah, when this is over, if we survive it, what happens then? What do you want to happen? Lena thought about it. I want that land. I want to build something on it. Something good, maybe a farm like my father had, or maybe something else. I don't know yet, but I want to prove that my family's name meant something. Then that's what we'll do. Just like that. You'll help me. Just like that. Why, you've already done more than anyone else. You could walk away right now and you'd still be ahead of everyone else in my life. Grant turned to look at her. In the lamplight, she looked younger, vulnerable, but unbroken. Because 8 years ago, I watched your family burn and did nothing. I've spent every day since trying to figure out how to live with that. And maybe I can't ever make it right. Maybe there's no amount of helping that erases what I failed to do, but I can make sure your future is different than your past. I can make sure that when people remember the Cartwrights, they remember more than tragedy. Lena's eyes glistened. You really believe that? I have to, otherwise what's the point of any of this? She nodded slowly, then tentatively she reached out and touched his hand, just briefly, just enough to say what words couldn't. Thank you. It was the second time she'd thanked him. It felt like a gift. The next morning, Grant woke to find Lena already outside practicing with the rifle. She'd set up new target sticks balanced on the fence posts. She was hitting them now more often than not. He watched from the porch as she reloaded, aimed, fired. Her movements were becoming smoother, more confident. When she noticed him, she lowered the rifle. I want to be ready. You're getting there. Not fast enough. If Dalton comes today, then we'll deal with it together. Lena set the rifle down. I've been thinking about what you said about making noise. Yeah, there's a newspaper in Austin, the Texas Observer. My father used to read it. They printed stories about corruption, about powerful men abusing their positions. Grant straightened. You think they'd be interested in Dalton? I think they'd be interested in a sheriff running illegal auctions and stealing land from war widows and orphans. Especially if we have proof. What kind of proof? Lena pulled something from her pocket, a folded piece of paper yellowed with age. My father kept records, bills of sale for the land, letters from the tax office showing he'd paid everything he owed. He was meticulous about it because he knew people were looking for reasons to take what was his. Grant took the paper carefully. It was the deed to the Cartwright land, signed and notarized. Legal and clear. Where did you get this? My father gave it to me the night before he died, told me to keep it hidden that someday I might need it. I've been carrying it since the auction, terrified someone would find it and destroy it. This proves the land is yours. It proves Dalton's been lying for 8 years. It proves my father wasn't a traitor, wasn't a debtor. It proves everything. Grant's mind raced. We get this to Austin, to the newspaper, they publish it. Dalton's finished. But we'd have to get to Austin. That's 2 days' ride, and Dalton would know we're going. Then we don't tell anyone. We leave tonight, ride hard, get this to the newspaper before he can stop us. Lena's face paled. Leave, just abandon the ranch. It's wood and dirt. You're more important. But if we run, we're not running, we're attacking, just from a different angle. Lena looked at the deed in Grant's hands, then at the cabin, then at the land stretching out around them. What about your life here, your ranch? I bought this place with blood money. Remember, I'm not particularly attached to it. But, Lena, Grant's voice was firm, I spent 8 years hiding out here trying to escape my guilt. That's not living. That's just surviving, and I'm tired of surviving. I want to do something that matters. This matters. She studied his face. You really mean that? Every word. Then we go tonight, but we need supplies. Food, water, ammunition. And we need a plan for what happens if Dalton catches us on the road. We fight. Just the two of us against Dalton and his deputies. If we have to. Lena picked up the rifle. Then I better keep practicing. They spent the day preparing. Grant packed saddlebags with supplies while Lena continued her shooting practice. By late afternoon, she was hitting targets 8 times out of 10. You're a natural, Grant said, impressed. Or just motivated, she reloaded. Fear's a good teacher. As the sun began to set, they heard horses approaching. Multiple horses. Grant's hand went to his gun. Get inside. No. Lena raised the rifle. We fight together, remember? 4 riders appeared on the horizon. Grant's stomach sank when he recognized them. Sheriff Dalton in front, Deputy Miller on his left. 2 other men Grant didn't know on his right, all armed. They stopped 30 feet from the cabin. Dalton smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. McCade, we need to talk. About what? About that girl you're harboring. See, I've been reviewing the auction records and I found some irregularities. What irregularities? The debt wasn't fully satisfied. Turns out there's still $23 owed, which means the sale wasn't legal, which means I need to take her back. Grant stepped forward. The sale was legal. You conducted it yourself. I made an error. Errors can be corrected. This isn't about errors. This is about that land. Dalton's smile widened. I don't know what you're talking about. The Cartwright land, the land you've been trying to steal for 8 years. The land that legally belongs to Lena. That land is in probate, and until it's settled, the girl's debts remain. Her father's debts, you mean, which died with him. Not how the law works, McCade. Children inherit debts along with assets. Except she has no debts. Her father paid everything he owed. Dalton's expression hardened. You calling me a liar? I'm calling you a thief and a murderer. The deputies' hands moved toward their guns. Dalton raised a hand, stopping them. Careful, McCade. Those are serious accusations. Then prove me wrong. Show me the debt records. Show me the tax documents. Show me anything that proves Robert Cartwright owed anyone a damn thing. The documents were lost in a fire. How convenient. Dalton leaned forward in from his saddle. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to hand over the girl. I'm going to take her back to town, and you're going to forget this whole ugly business. Do that, and we'll call it square. You can keep your little ranch, live out your days in peace. And if I don't, then I'll charge you with kidnapping, with interfering in official county business, with harboring a fugitive. Take your pick. You'll hang, and I'll still get the girl. Grant's hand moved toward his gun. Behind him, he heard Lena cock the rifle. I'm not going with you, she called out. Dalton's eyes shifted to her. Girl, you don't have a choice. Yes, I do, and I choose to stay here. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Good. Lena's voice didn't waver. I want it to be hard. I want you to work for it, because I'm done being easy. One of the unknown deputies laughed. Feisty, I like that. Dalton shot him a look that killed the laughter. Then he turned back to Grant. Last chance, McCade. Hand her over and we all walk away. Grant drew his gun. It was in his hand before anyone could blink. No. The deputies reached for their weapons. Grant aimed at Dalton. First man who draws gets to watch his sheriff die. Everything stopped. The world held its breath. Dalton's smile never wavered, but something cold entered his eyes. You're making a mistake. Wouldn't be my first. You can't watch her forever. Eventually you'll sleep, you'll turn your back, you'll make an error, and when you do, I'll be there. Then I guess I better not make any errors. Dalton stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned his horse. This isn't over. I know. The 4 men rode away, leaving dust and threat in their wake. Grant didn't lower his gun until they were out of sight. When he finally did, his hand was shaking. Lena appeared beside him. We can't stay here. I know. They'll come back. Tonight, probably. With more men. I know. So we leave now, right now. Grant looked at his cabin, at the ranch he'd built with blood money and guilt, at the life he'd been hiding in for 8 years. Yeah, he said, we leave now. They worked fast, saddled 2 horses, loaded supplies, hid the deed in Lena's boot where no one would think to look. As the last light faded from the sky, they mounted up. You ready? Grant asked. Lena looked back at the cabin one last time. No, but that's never stopped me before. They rode into the darkness, heading east toward Austin. Behind them, the cabin stood silent and empty, waiting for whatever came next. And in the distance, barely visible in the gathering night, 4 riders turned back toward the ranch. They rode hard for 3 hours before Grant finally slowed the pace. The horses were lathered with sweat, breathing hard in the cool night air. Lena's face was pale in the moonlight, her knuckles white where she gripped the reins. "We need to rest the horses," Grant said, "just for a few minutes. What if they're following us?" "They are following us, but they'll have to rest their horses too." They dismounted near a small creek. The water ran clear and cold over the smooth stones. Grant let the horses drink while Lena filled their canteens. "How far to Austin?" she asked. 2 days if we push hard, 3 if we're careful." "We don't have 3 days." "I know." Lena splashed water on her face. Her hands shook. "I've never been this far from home before, never been anywhere, really." Scared, terrified, but not of the distance, of what happens if we don't make it. Grant checked his rifle, made sure it was loaded. "We'll make it." "You can't know that." "No, but I can believe it. Sometimes that's enough." They mounted up again and continued east. The land changed as they rode flat scrubland, giving way to rolling hills dotted with oak trees. The moon was high and bright, turning everything silver and strange. Around midnight, Lena's horse stumbled. She managed to stay in the saddle, but barely. "You all right?" "Fine, just tired." Grant looked at her, really looked, saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she swayed slightly in the saddle. She'd been running on fear and determination for hours, but even that had limits. "We need to stop, really stop. A few hours sleep." "We can't, Lena. You're going to fall off that horse, and if Dalton catches us because you're too exhausted to shoot straight, we're both dead anyway." She wanted to argue. He could see it in her face. But her body betrayed her, another sway, another moment where her eyes closed longer than a blink. "Fine, but just a few hours." They found a small clearing surrounded by dense brush, good cover, easily defensible. Grant tied the horses where they could graze and keep watch. Then he built a small fire, small enough for warmth, but not so large it would give away their position. Lena sat close to the flames, hugging her knees to her chest. Grant gave her his coat. "You'll freeze," she protested. "I've been colder. Sleep. I'll keep watch." "You need sleep too." "I'll sleep when we get to Austin." Lena studied him. "You're not as young as you used to be. You push yourself too hard, you'll collapse." "Thanks for the reminder." She almost smiled. "Almost. I'm serious. We take turns, 2 hours each." "Lena, 2 hours each, or I don't sleep at all out of spite." Grant sighed. "You're as stubborn as your father." "Good. He taught me well." She curled up near the fire, using her saddle as a pillow. Within minutes, her breathing deepened. Grant watched her sleep, this girl, who'd survived so much and still somehow found the strength to fight. He thought about her father, about Robert Cartwright's face the last time Grant had seen him at the general store a week before the fire. Robert had been buying candy for his children, laughing with old Barlow about something Grant couldn't remember. A good man, a happy man, a man who'd had no idea his world was about to burn. Grant had known. His father had told him the night before, and Grant had said nothing, done nothing, just watched it all unfold like he was watching a play instead of a murder. The memory burned worse than any flame. "I'll get it right this time," he whispered to the darkness. "I swear to God, I'll get it right." The night passed slowly. Grant kept his rifle across his knees and his eyes on the shadows beyond the firelight. Every sound made him tense, the rustle of leaves, the crack of a branch, the distant howl of coyotes. But no riders came. When 2 hours had passed, he woke Lena gently. "Your turn." She sat up, disoriented. Already, wake me in 2 hours, and Lena, if you hear anything at all, you wake me immediately. Don't try to be a hero." "I'm not a hero. I'm just a girl with a gun and a grudge." "That's exactly what worries me." Grant lay down where she'd been sleeping. The ground was hard and cold, but exhaustion pulled him under within seconds. He dreamed of fire, of screams, of a little girl with a bleeding wrist asking him why he didn't help. In the dream, he tried to explain, tried to make her understand, but every word came out as smoke. And when he finally found his voice, all he could say was, "I'm sorry," over and over, until the words meant nothing. He woke to Lena shaking his shoulder. "Grant, someone's coming." He was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. "How many?" "Can't tell, but I heard horses to the west." Grant kicked dirt over the fire, plunging them into darkness. "Get behind those rocks. Stay low." They moved quickly and quietly. Grant positioned himself where he could see the trail they'd taken. Lena crouched beside him, her rifle ready. Minutes passed. Then they heard it, the soft thud of hoofbeats on dirt. Getting closer, 2 horses, maybe 3. Grant's finger moved to the trigger. Beside him, Lena's breathing quickened. The horses appeared through the trees. Grant counted. 2 riders, both men, both armed, but they weren't Dalton's men. One was old, maybe 70, with a long white beard and a battered hat. The other was younger, maybe 40, with a weathered face and kind eyes. They stopped at the clearing where Grant and Lena's fire had been. "Someone camped here recently," the older man said. "Fire's still warm." "Think it's them?" the younger man asked. Could be anyone." "We should keep moving if we can catch them before they reach Austin." "Then what?" "We're not killers, Samuel." Grant stepped out from behind the rocks, rifle raised. "Then what are you?" Both men's hands went to their guns, but they didn't draw. The older man squinted at Grant. "Easy now, we're not looking for trouble. That's what everyone says right before they cause trouble. Who are you?" "Name's Thomas Brennan. This is my son Samuel. We're looking for Grant McCade and a girl named Lena Cartwright." Lena gasped. Grant kept his rifle steady. "Why?" Thomas raised his hands slowly, showing he was unarmed. "Because we want to help you." "Help us do what?" "Bring down Sheriff Dalton. The man's been a cancer on this county for too long." Grant didn't lower his rifle. "How do I know you're not working for him?" "You don't, but if we were, you'd already be dead. We've been tracking you for hours. Could have ambushed you any time. Why didn't you?" "Because like I said, we're not killers, we're farmers. Good people who are tired of watching bad men win." Lena stepped out from behind the rocks. "How do you know who we are?" Thomas turned to her, his expression softened. "Because I knew your father child. Robert Cartwright was my friend. And when they burned his farm, when they destroyed his life, I stood by and did nothing, just like everyone else in this godforsaken county." His voice cracked. "I've carried that shame for 8 years. When I heard McCade had bought you at that auction, when I heard he was standing up to Dalton, I knew it was time to stop being a coward." Grant studied the old man's face, saw genuine regret there, genuine pain. "You could have stood up for him when it mattered." "I know, and I'll have to live with that until I die. But maybe I can stand up for his daughter now. Maybe that counts for something." Samuel spoke up. "There are others like us, people who know what Dalton's done, people who are ready to testify if given the chance. But we need that deed you're carrying. We need proof." Grant's eyes narrowed. "How do you know about the deed?" "Because your neighbor, old Barlow, he's one of us. He heard Dalton talking about it, heard him say he needed to get that deed before you reached Austin. Barlow's helping us. More than you know. He's been collecting evidence for years. Receipts, letters, documents, everything Dalton thought was hidden. Barlow's kept copies." Lena lowered her rifle. "Why didn't he come himself?" "Because Dalton's watching him like a hawk. But he told us where you were headed, asked us to find you, keep you safe." Grant wanted to believe them, but trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. "Prove it. Prove you knew Robert Cartwright." Thomas reached into his pocket slowly, pulled out a faded photograph, handed it to Lena. She took it with shaking hands, looked at it, then her knees buckled. Grant caught her. "What is it?" "It's my family." Her voice broke. "My mother, my father, Michael, and me, the summer before the fire." In the photograph, a young Lena grinned at the camera, missing her front teeth. Her mother held baby Michael. Her father stood behind them, his hand on his wife's shoulder, smiling like a man who had everything he'd ever wanted. "Robert gave me that picture the day before he died." Thomas said quietly. Made me promise to give it to his daughter if I ever found her. Said she should remember them happy. Lena clutched the photograph to her chest. Tears streamed down her face. Grant lowered his rifle. All right, I believe you. They sat around a new fire as dawn began to break. Thomas and Samuel shared their supplies, bread-dried meat coffee that tasted like heaven after 2 days of nothing. How many others are there? Grant asked. People willing to testify. 15, maybe 20, Samuel said. Farmers mostly. People Daltons cheated or threatened over the years. They're scared, but they're ready. They just need someone to lead them. That's not me. I'm nobody. You're the man who stood up to Dalton. That makes you somebody. Thomas poured more coffee. We've got a plan. Samuel and I will ride ahead to Austin. We'll find the newspaper, tell them what's coming. Meanwhile, you and Lena take the back roads. Slower but safer, less chance of running into Dalton's men. How do we know you'll actually go to the newspaper? You don't. But what choice do you have, Daltons, between you and Austin? You'll never make it without help. Grant looked at Lena. She'd stopped crying but still held the photograph like it was the most precious thing in the world. What do you think? I think my father trusted Thomas once. Maybe I should too. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She met his eyes. We can't do this alone, Grant. We need help, even if it's risky. Grant thought about it, weighed the options, decided that sometimes you just had to bet on people being better than they'd been before. All right, we'll take the back roads. But if this is a trap... It's not, Thomas said firmly. I swear on your father's memory. He said to Lena, we'll get you to Austin safely. They split up an hour later. Thomas and Samuel rode east on the main road, while Grant and Lena headed south, planning to circle around and approach Austin from a different direction. You think they're telling the truth? Lena asked as they rode. I think they believe they are. Whether that's the same as actually telling the truth, we'll find out. You're not very trusting. I've learned not to be. Must be lonely, never trusting anyone. Grant glanced at her. You trust me. Lena was quiet for a moment. I'm trying to. That's something. Yeah, it is. They rode through the morning, staying off main trails. The land here was rougher, rocky hills and thick brush that slowed their progress but offered good cover. Around noon, they stopped to rest the horses and eat. Lena pulled out the photograph Thomas had given her. I'd forgotten this day, she said softly. We went to the creek. My father caught a fish this big. She held her hands apart. Michael tried to touch it and fell in the water. He cried for an hour. Grant watched her face soften with memory. My mother made us pose for this picture. She said someday we'd want to remember this day. She was right. She sounds like she was wise. She was everything, patient and kind and strong. After my father came back from the war, he had nightmares, bad ones. She'd stay up with him all night, holding him, telling him he was safe. She never complained, never made him feel weak. Lena's voice cracked. She died trying to save Michael. The fire started in his room. She ran in to get him out. Neither of them made it. Grant's chest tightened. Your father told me once that she was the best thing that ever happened to him. When did he tell you that? The day before the fire. We were both at the general store. He was buying candy for you and Michael. He said, I'm the luckiest man alive, Grant. Got a wife who loves me, 2 beautiful children, and land that's mine. A man can't ask for more than that. Lena's hands trembled, and the next day it was all gone. The next day I let it all burn. They sat in heavy silence. Then Lena spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I hated you for so long. When I finally remembered who you were, the man who bandaged my wrist, I hated you even more, because you'd been kind to me while my family died, and that felt worse than if you'd been cruel. I understand. But now, she struggled with the words, now I'm starting to see that maybe hate takes up too much space, and maybe I need that space for other things. Like what? Like hope, Like believing we might actually win this, like thinking I might have a future beyond just surviving. Grant met her eyes. You'll have that future, I promise. Don't promise things you can't control. Then I promise I'll die trying to make it happen. That I can control. Lena almost smiled. Oh, you're a stubborn old man. You're a stubborn young woman. We make a good team. They mounted up and continued riding. The afternoon sun beat down on them, relentless and hot. Grant's shirt was soaked with sweat. Lena's face was flushed, but she didn't complain. Around 3 in the afternoon, they heard gunshots. Grant pulled his horse to a stop. That came from the east, the main road where Thomas and Samuel went. More gunshots, then silence. Lena's face went pale. We have to help them. It could be a trap, or they could be dying while we sit here debating. Grant cursed. She was right. Stay behind me, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understand? I'm not leaving you. Lena, I said I'm not leaving you. We're in this together. Grant wanted to argue, didn't have time. Then stay close and shoot straight. They rode toward the sound of gunfire. As they got closer, Grant could hear men shouting, then more shots. They topped a small rise and saw the scene below. Thomas and Samuel were pinned down behind some rocks. Their horses were dead. 4 men, Dalton's deputies by the look of them, had them surrounded. Grant didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired. One of the deputies went down. The others scattered, looking for cover. Get to the rocks, Grant shouted to Lena. They rode down the hill at full gallop. Bullets whizzed past them. Grant felt one tug at his sleeve. Another kicked up dirt beside his horse. They reached the rocks and dismounted. Thomas's face was bleeding from a gash above his eye. Thought you took the back roads, he gasped. Heard the shooting. Couldn't leave you. Samuel was reloading his gun with shaking hands. There were 6 of them. We got 2 before they pinned us down. 4 left then. Where are they? Spread out in those trees. They've been trying to flank us for the last 10 minutes. Grant scanned the tree line, saw movement to the left, fired, missed. We need to move, he said. Can't win a standoff against 4 men with better position. Move where? Thomas asked. They've got our horses. We're sitting ducks. Lena spoke up. Not if we split up. 2 of us create a distraction while the other 2 circle around behind them. That's suicide, Samuel said. No staying here is suicide. At least my way, some of us might survive. Grant looked at her, saw determination in her eyes, saw her father's stubbornness, saw courage he wasn't sure he possessed. I'll create the distraction, he said. No, I will. Lena's voice was firm. I'm faster, smaller, harder to hit. Absolutely not. It's not your decision. She checked her rifle. Thomas and Samuel will circle left. You'll circle right. I'll keep them busy. Lena, you can't. Yes, I can. Because I'm not that scared little girl on the auction block anymore, and I'm tired of letting men decide what I can and can't do. Before Grant could stop her, she stood up and fired 3 quick shots into the trees. Then she ran. The deputies opened fire immediately. Bullets chewed up the ground around her feet. She zigzagged, making herself a difficult target, firing back as she ran. Damn fool girl, Grant muttered. But he was already moving, using her distraction to circle right. Thomas and Samuel went left. Lena made it to a cluster of boulders and dove behind them. Grant saw blood on her sleeve and felt his heart stop, but she kept firing, keeping the deputies' attention on her. Grant moved through the trees, silent and fast. He could see 2 of the deputies now crouched behind cover, focused entirely on Lena. He lined up his shot, fired, fired. 1 deputy went down. The other turned, bringing his gun around. Grant fired again, missed. The deputy returned fire. The bullet hit a tree next to Grant's head, showering him with splinters. Then Samuel was there, tackling the deputy from behind. They wrestled for the gun. It went off. Samuel screamed. Grant ran over. The deputy was dead. Samuel was clutching his leg, blood seeping through his fingers. How bad? Hurts like hell, but I'll live. Go help the others. Grant heard more gunfire from the left. He ran toward it and found Thomas struggling with another deputy. The man had a knife and was trying to drive it into Thomas's chest. Grant reversed his rifle and smashed the butt into the deputy's head. The man dropped. "That's 3 down," Thomas gasped. "Where's the 4th? Grant's blood turned to ice. "Lena." He ran back toward the boulders. The 4th deputy was circling around, getting into position to shoot Lena from behind. Grant didn't have a shot. Too many trees in the way. He couldn't fire without risking hitting Lena. "Lena, behind you." She spun, saw the deputy, raised her rifle, but the deputy was faster. His gun came up. Grant threw himself forward, knowing he was too far away, knowing he'd never reach her in time. The deputy's gun fired. Lena went down. Grant heard himself scream, a sound of pure rage and terror. He fired his rifle without aiming, just pointed it at the deputy and pulled the trigger again and again until the chamber was empty and the man was dead. Then he was at Lena's side, turning her over, looking for the wound. Blood soaked her shirt, high on the left shoulder. She was conscious, gasping for air. "It's all right," Grant said, his hand shaking as he pressed against the wound. "It's all right. You're going to be fine." "Hurts," she managed. "I know. Just breathe. Stay with me." Thomas appeared, tearing his shirt into strips. "Let me see it." Grant moved aside. Thomas examined the wound with practiced hands. Bullet went through, missed the bone. "She's lucky." "Lucky," Lena gasped. "Great." "Well, you're going to be fine," Thomas said. "But we need to stop the bleeding and get you somewhere safe." They bandaged her shoulder as best they could. Samuel limped over, his own leg wrapped. "We're a sorry-looking group," he said. "We're alive," Grant replied. "That's more than those deputies can say." "Dalton will know by sundown," Thomas warned. "When these men don't report back, he'll come looking." "Then we keep moving." Grant looked at Lena. "Can you ride? Can I breathe?" "That's not funny." "Wasn't trying to be funny. Help me up." They got her onto Grant's horse. She leaned against him, her injured shoulder pressed against his back. He could feel her blood soaking through his shirt. Samuel insisted he could ride despite his wounded leg. They took the dead deputies' horses and headed east again, this time moving faster despite their injuries. As the sun began to set, Lena's voice came weak behind Grant. "Thank you for coming back for them. You're the one who insisted. Still, you could have kept riding. Left them to die. I'm done leaving people to die." "I know, that's why I'm starting to trust you." Grant felt her weight shift slightly. "You still with me, Lena?" "Still here, not going anywhere." "Good, because I need you to stay awake. Talk to me." "About what?" "Anything. Tell me about your mother, about the farm, about anything that keeps you conscious." So she talked, her voice weak but steady, telling him stories about a life that had been stolen from her, about summer days swimming in the creek, about her mother's cooking, about Michael's laugh, about her father teaching her to read by lantern light. And as she talked, Grant realized something. He wasn't just trying to atone for the past anymore. He was fighting for the future, her future, a future where a girl who'd lost everything might get a chance to build something new. Night fell. They rode on. Behind them, somewhere in the darkness, Sheriff Dalton was coming. But ahead, somewhere in that same darkness, was Austin, was hope, was justice. They just had to stay alive long enough to reach it. They reached the outskirts of Austin just after midnight. The town was bigger than anything Lena had ever seen. Buildings, 3 stories high, street lamps burning even at this late hour, and the sound of piano music drifting from a saloon somewhere in the distance. Grant felt Lena's weight against his back growing heavier. She'd stopped talking an hour ago, and that terrified him more than any gunfight. "Lena, stay with me." "Still here." Her voice was barely a whisper, just tired. "I know, but we're here now. Just hold on a little longer." Thomas rode up alongside them. "The newspaper office is on Congress Avenue, but at this hour no one will be there. Then we find the editor's house. We don't know where he lives. Then we find someone who does." They rode down the main street, 4 battered riders on exhausted horses drawing stares from the few people still out. A woman clutched her shawl tighter and hurried inside. Two men standing outside the saloon watched them pass with suspicious eyes. Grant didn't care. Let them stare. Let them wonder. All that mattered was getting Lena somewhere safe. They found a small hotel with a light still burning in the window. Grant dismounted carefully, helping Lena down. She swayed on her feet and he caught her. "I've got you. I can walk. I know you can, but you don't have to." He half carried her inside. The desk clerk was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Those eyes widened when she saw the blood. What happened to her? "She was shot. We need a room and a doctor, in that order." "I don't want trouble." Grant slapped $20 on the counter. "We're not trouble. We're people who need help. Can you provide it or not?" The woman looked at the money, then at Lena's pale face, then at Grant's desperate eyes. "Room 3, top of the stairs. I'll send for Doc Morrison." "Thank you." Grant carried Lena upstairs. Thomas and Samuel followed Samuel, limping badly on his wounded leg. The room was small but clean, one bed, a wash basin, a chair by the window. Grant laid Lena on the bed as gently as he could. Her eyes fluttered open. "Where are we?" "Austin. Safe. The doctor's coming." "Good." Her eyes closed again. "Tired of bleeding." Thomas pulled Grant aside. "I need to find the newspaper editor. His name is William Foster, lives somewhere on 7th Street. Go. I'll stay with Lena." "Grant." Thomas's voice was serious. "If Dalton followed us, and he probably did, he'll be here by morning, maybe sooner. We need to move fast." "I know. That deed needs to get to Foster tonight, before Dalton can stop us." Grant looked at Lena lying on the bed, her face pale as death. Then he reached into her boot and pulled out the folded deed. "Take it, get it published, that's what matters." Thomas took the deed with reverent hands. "I won't let you down, I won't let her down. You already did once, don't make it twice." Thomas flinched at the words, but didn't argue. He couldn't. They both knew it was true. Samuel spoke up from where he sat, rewrapping his leg wound. "I'll stay here, help guard her while you're gone. You can barely walk. I can shoot, that's all that matters." After Thomas left, Grant sat beside Lena's bed and waited. Samuel positioned himself by the window rifle across his lap, watching the street below. The minutes crawled by. Grant found himself staring at Lena's face, watching the shallow rise and fall of her chest, counting each breath like it might be her last. "Don't you die on me," he whispered. "Not after everything. Not now." Her hand twitched. He took it carefully, avoiding the bandaged shoulder. "I'm here. You're safe." Her eyes opened just a crack. "My father's watch. Did Thomas take it with the deed?" "No, it's still in your pocket." "Good, don't let anyone take it." "I won't." "Promise me." "I promise." She squeezed his hand weakly. "You keep your promises, don't you? Not like other men." "I try. That's why I trust you." Her eyes closed again. "Took me long enough." The doctor arrived 20 minutes later, a thin man in his 50s with tired eyes and gentle hands. He examined Lena's shoulder while Grant paced like a caged animal. "The bullet went clean through," Dr. Morrison said. "That's good. No fragments to dig out, but she's lost a lot of blood and there's risk of infection. What can you do? Clean the wound, stitch it properly, keep her still, and hope her body does the rest." He looked at Grant. "She's strong, young, that helps, but the next 24 hours will tell the story. Whatever you need, whatever it costs. What I need is for you to leave the room. You're making me nervous." Grant wanted to argue, didn't. "I'll be right outside." He stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him, leaned against the wall and let his head fall back. His hands were shaking. When had they started shaking? Samuel hobbled out after a few minutes. "Doc says I should get this leg looked at too. Might as well, since he's here." "How's Lena?" "Tough as nails, that girl. She'll make it." "You don't know that." "No, but believing it doesn't cost anything, and it might help." They sat in silence. Grant could hear the doctor moving around inside the room, hear water splashing in the basin, hear Lena's sharp intake of breath when something hurt. He wanted to go back in, wanted to hold her hand, tell her it would be all right, but he stayed put, gave the doctor room to work. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, the door opened and Dr. Morrison emerged, wiping his hands on a towel. She's stable. Wounds clean, stitched and bandaged. She'll need rest, lots of it, and she'll need these. He handed Grant a small bottle of pills. For the pain, 1 every 4 hours, no more than that. When will she wake up? Could be an hour, could be tomorrow morning. Her body needs to heal and sleep is part of that. Can I see her? Yes, but let her rest. No excitement, no moving around. She needs to stay still. Grant went back inside. Lena was lying on the bed, her shoulder properly bandaged now, her face still pale but peaceful. She looked young, vulnerable, like the 9-year-old girl he'd pulled from the flames 8 years ago. He pulled the chair close to the bed and sat down, took her hand again. "You did good," he said quietly. "Real good. Your father would be proud." Outside, dawn was breaking. The sky was turning from black to gray to pale pink. A new day, one that might bring justice, or might bring Dalton and his men. Grant didn't know which. But he knew he'd face whatever came, because that's what you did for people you cared about. You stood between them and the darkness, even when the darkness was bigger and meaner and better armed than you. Especially then. Thomas returned just after sunrise. He looked exhausted but triumphant. Foster's got the deed. He's examining it now, verifying everything. He says if it checks out and he thinks it will, he'll run the story in tomorrow's edition. Tomorrow, that's too long. Dalton could be here by then. Foster says he needs time to write it properly, to make it ironclad. If he rushes it, Dalton could challenge it in court, claim it's libelous, but if he does it right, with all the facts verified, it becomes public record. Undeniable. Grant wanted to argue, wanted to demand they print it today, right now, this very minute. But he understood the logic. A rushed story could be dismissed. A thorough one would be devastating. Fine, tomorrow. But we need to keep Lena safe until then. I've got men coming, the ones I told you about, the farmers, the ranchers, the people who want Dalton gone. Foster sent word to them. They'll be here by this afternoon. How many? 20, maybe more. Good men, armed and ready. Samuel stood from his chair by the window. Riders coming, 6 of them. Grant's hand went to his gun. Dalton, can't tell yet, but they're moving with purpose. Thomas moved to the other window. That's not Dalton, that's Marcus Webb and his sons. They're friends, part of our group. Grant didn't relax, couldn't, not until he knew for certain, but Thomas was right. The 6 riders dismounted and came inside. They were rough-looking men farmers by the calluses on their hands and the dirt under their nails, but they carried themselves with quiet determination. The oldest one, Marcus Webb, clasped Thomas's hand. Heard you needed help. More than you know. Marcus looked at Grant. You're McCade, the one who bought Robert's girl at that auction. I am. Thank you for that. Robert was a good man. His daughter deserves better than what this county gave her. She's upstairs, shot by Dalton's deputies. Marcus's jaw tightened. Is she alive? For now, doctor says she needs rest. Then we'll make sure she gets it. Dalton shows up here, he'll have to go through all of us. More men arrived throughout the morning. By noon, there were 18 armed men positioned around the hotel. Some inside, some on the roof, some in the buildings across the street. They'd turned the place into a fortress. Grant stayed with Lena the whole time. She woke once, asked for water, took one of the pills the doctor had left, and fell back asleep. Her forehead was warm but not feverish. That was good, meant the infection hadn't taken hold yet. Thomas brought him food around 1 in the afternoon. You need to eat. Not hungry. Eat anyway. You'll be no good to her if you collapse. Grant forced down some bread and cheese. It tasted like dust in his mouth. Foster wants to talk to her, Thomas said. When she's strong enough. He wants to hear her story firsthand. Not until she's ready. I told him that. He understands. But Grant, her testimony is important. The deed proves the land is hers, but her story proves what Dalton did. The auction, the abuse, the threats, all of it. She'll tell her story when she's ready. Thomas nodded and left. Grant sat back down beside the bed. Lena's eyes opened slowly. How long was I asleep? About 6 hours. How do you feel? Like I got shot. She tried to sit up, winced, and fell back. Hurts worse than I thought it would. Doctor left pills. I can give you another one. Not yet. Makes me fuzzy. I want to think clearly. Think about everything. What happens next? What we do if Dalton comes? What I say to this newspaper man? You don't have to say anything. The deed is enough. No, it's not. Lena's voice was stronger now. The deed proves the land is mine, but my story proves what Dalton really is. A thief, a murderer, a man who sells children to settle made-up debts. Lena, I need to do this, Grant. I need people to know what happened, not just to me, but to everyone he's hurt, because if I don't speak up, who will? Grant looked at her, saw steel in her eyes, saw her father's courage. All right, but only when you're strong enough. I'm strong enough now. You just woke up from being shot. I've been shot before, survived worse. That stopped Grant cold. What? Lena looked away. The Parkers, when I tried to run, Mr. Parker shot me in the leg, said it was to teach me a lesson about staying put. Grant felt rage building in his chest, hot and violent. Where are the Parkers now? Dead, both of them, house fire 3 years ago. Good, Lena looked at him. You mean that? Every word. They hurt you. I'm glad they're dead. Something softened in her expression. You really do care about me, don't you? This isn't just about your guilt. No, it's not just about that. Then what is it about? Grant struggled to find the words. You remind me that there's still good in this world, that people can survive terrible things and still be brave, still be kind, still fight for what's right. I'm not kind, I'm angry. You can be both. Lena was quiet for a moment, then she reached out and touched his hand. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I wanted you to. I'll never give up on you. Don't make promises. I know, don't make promises I can't keep, but this one I can, because I'd rather die than let Dalton hurt you again. Lena's eyes glistened. You might get your wish. If he comes here, he won't touch you. There are 18 armed men downstairs who'll make sure of that. 18 farmers, ranchers, people who knew your father, people who are tired of Dalton's control. All those people came for me. They came for justice. You just happened to be at the center of it. Lena looked at the window, at the light streaming through, at the world beyond this room. I never thought I'd see justice, not real justice. I thought men like Dalton always won. Not this time. You can't know that. No, but I can believe it, and I can fight for it. We all can. A knock came at the door. Grant's hand went to his gun, but it was just Thomas. Foster's here. Wants to talk to Lena if she's willing. Lena nodded. Send him in. William Foster was a lean man in his 40s, with ink-stained fingers and sharp, intelligent eyes. He carried a notebook and moved with the careful respect of someone entering a sick room. Miss Cartwright, I'm honored to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Mr. Foster, Lena's voice was steady despite her pain. Thomas says you're going to tell my story, if you'll let me, but first I need to hear it. All of it. Everything that happened from the night of the fire to now. Lena glanced at Grant. He nodded encouragement. So she told it. She told Foster about watching her home burn, about her father's slow death by alcohol and despair, about the families who took her in and worked her like a slave, about Mr. Henderson's midnight visits, about the cellar at the Parker farm, about the sheriff who decided her father's fabricated debts were hers to pay. She told him about standing on that auction block in chains, about the men who looked at her like she was livestock, about Grant's unexpected bid. Foster wrote it all down, his face growing darker with each revelation. When Lena finished, he set down his pen and looked at her with something like awe. You're extraordinarily brave, Miss Cartwright. I'm not brave, I just didn't die. That's the definition of bravery, choosing to live when dying would be easier. Lena looked surprised, like no one had ever framed it that way before. Foster continued, "This story, combined with the deed and the testimonies we're collecting, will destroy Dalton. His career, his reputation, everything. The governor will have no choice but to intervene." "What about his men, the deputies? Once Dalton falls, they'll scatter. Cowards always do when their leader is gone. And the land, my father's land, legally yours. The deed proves it. Once this story publishes, no court in Texas would dare rule against you." For the first time since Grant had known her, Lena smiled, really smiled. It transformed her face, made her look young and hopeful and beautiful. "My father's name will be cleared. More than that, he'll be remembered as a hero, a good man destroyed by corruption and greed. His story will matter. It already mattered, but now people will know it." Foster stood. "The story runs tomorrow morning. By noon, everyone in Texas will know what Sheriff Dalton is." After he left, Lena lay back against the pillows, exhausted but satisfied. "We did it," she whispered. "Not yet. Not until that paper hits the streets. But we're close, closer than I ever thought we'd get." Grant squeezed her hand gently. "Your father would be proud." "I hope so. I hope he's somewhere watching, knowing that his death meant something, that his life meant something." "It did. You're the proof." Lena's eyes drifted closed. "Stay with me. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. I promise." She fell asleep, holding his hand. The sun was setting when Samuel burst into the room. "Dalton's here. Rode in 5 minutes ago with 12 men. They're down the street at the sheriff's office." Grant stood carefully, not wanting to wake Lena. "The Austin sheriff. Name's Coleman. He's talking with Dalton now. Don't know which way he'll swing." "How many men do we have?" 22 now. "More coming every hour. We've got numbers, but Dalton's men are professionals, deputies and hired guns." Grant looked at Lena, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger gathering outside. "Tell the men to hold position. No one shoots unless Dalton makes a move first. And if he makes a move, then we end this tonight." Samuel left. Grant moved to the window and looked down at the street. He could see men gathering, some his, some Dalton's. The town was choosing sides, whether it wanted to or not. Thomas appeared at his shoulder. "We could leave, sneak out the back, head north, get Lena out of harm's way. And then what? Run forever? That's not living. It's surviving. Surviving isn't enough anymore. Not for her, not for me." "You're willing to die for this." Grant thought about it. About 8 years of guilt, about a little girl with a bleeding wrist, about a young woman who'd survived things that would break most people and still found the courage to fight. "Yeah, I am." "Then I hope your aim is better than your judgment." Grant almost smiled. "You and me both." Night fell. The hotel became silent except for the creak of floorboards as armed men moved into position. Grant sat beside Lena's bed rifle across his knees, watching her sleep. Around midnight she woke, saw the rifle, saw his face. "He's here, isn't he?" "Yes." "How many men?" "Well, we have 22. And tomorrow the story prints." "Tomorrow the story prints." Lena sat up slowly, wincing at the pain in her shoulder. "Then we just have to survive one more night. That's all. Help me up. I want to be ready." "Lena, you're in no condition. I'm in exactly the condition I need to be in. Help me up or I'll do it myself and tear these stitches." Grant helped her stand. She swayed but didn't fall. Thomas had left her rifle by the door. She picked it up with her good arm. "I can't shoot well with one arm," she admitted, "but I can make noise. And sometimes that's enough." They positioned themselves by the window, waited. The hours crawled by. 2 in the morning, 3, 4. Then, just before dawn, movement in the street. Dalton and his men were coming. Grant counted them. 12, just like Samuel had said. They moved in formation, practiced and professional. They stopped 50 feet from the hotel. Dalton stepped forward. McCade, I know you're in there. Send the girl out and we'll settle this peacefully. Grant opened the window. The only thing that's getting settled is your arrest for murder theft and human trafficking. Big words from a dead man, you're outnumbered and outgunned. Count again, Sheriff. As if on cue, men appeared in windows all around the hotel, on rooftops, in doorways. 22 armed men all aimed at Dalton and his deputies. Dalton's confidence wavered. Grant could see it even in the darkness. This is your last chance, Dalton shouted. Walk away now, and maybe you'll live. No, Grant called back. This is your last chance. Surrender now, and maybe you'll see a trial instead of a noose. Dalton laughed, cold and cruel. You think you've won? You think some farmers with old rifles scare me? No, but this might. Grant held up a copy of the morning newspaper. Foster had brought it an hour ago, fresh off the press. Tomorrow morning, every person in Texas reads about what you did, about the fires, the murders, the auctions, all of it. Even from 50 feet away, Grant could see Dalton's face go pale. You're bluffing. Read it yourself. Grant threw the newspaper down. It landed at Dalton's feet. Dalton didn't pick it up, didn't need to. He knew it was real, knew his world had just ended. You've destroyed me, he said quietly. No, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Dalton's hand moved toward his gun. 22 rifles cocked simultaneously. The sound echoed through the empty street like thunder. Dalton froze. Don't, Grant said. You've lost. Accept it. For a long moment, nothing happened. The world held its breath. Then Dalton's shoulders sagged. His hand moved away from his gun. Stand down, he said to his men. Some did, others hesitated. One Deputy Miller, the young hothead, reached for his weapon anyway. I said stand down. Dalton's voice cracked like a whip. Miller froze, then slowly raised his hands. Austin Sheriff Coleman appeared with 6 of his own deputies. Sheriff Dalton, I'm placing you under arrest for the crimes detailed in this morning's newspaper. Your men have a choice: cooperate and face lesser charges, or fight and hang alongside you. Dalton's men threw down their weapons. It was over. Lena sagged against Grant. He caught her, held her up. We won, she whispered. You won. This was always your fight. No, it was ours. Below, they were shackling Dalton. He looked up at the hotel window, saw Grant and Lena standing there. This isn't finished, he shouted. I have friends, lawyers, money. You have nothing, Grant called back, just like you left her with nothing. How does it feel? Dalton didn't answer. They led him away, inched him to the dawn. The sun rose over Austin that morning like a promise being kept. Lena stood at the hotel window, her injured shoulder throbbing, but her spirit lighter than it had been in 8 years. Below, people were already gathering on the street corners, passing copies of the newspaper from hand to hand, their faces showing shock, anger, and something Lena had almost forgotten: existed justice. Grant came up behind her, careful not to startle her. You should be resting. I've rested enough. I want to see this. They watched together as more people emerged from their homes and businesses, drawn by the commotion. Some pointed at the hotel. A few even waved. Word was spreading fast about the girl who'd survived Dalton's corruption and the man who'd helped her fight back. It feels strange, Lena said quietly. Being seen, being known. I spent so long trying to be invisible. You don't have to be invisible anymore. I don't know how to be anything else. Grant turned her gently to face him. Then you'll learn. Same way you learn to shoot. Same way you learn to survive. One day at a time. A knock at the door interrupted them. Thomas entered with William Foster, both men wearing expressions of satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. The governor's office sent a telegram, Foster said, waving a piece of paper. They're sending investigators. Dalton's entire operation is being dismantled as we speak. The auction house is closed, the deputies are being questioned, and your father's land has been officially restored to your name. Lena's knees went weak. Grant steadied her. It's really mine. Every acre. The deed is registered, the taxes are marked paid retroactively, mind you, and no one can challenge it, not legally anyway. What about the families, the ones who hurt me, the Hendersons, the others? Foster's expression darkened. We're gathering testimony, building cases. It'll take time, but they'll answer for what they did. And Mr. Henderson, will he go to prison? If I have anything to say about it, he'll hang, but that decision belongs to a judge and jury. Lena nodded slowly. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, the moment when the people who'd hurt her would face consequences. But now that it was here, she felt hollow, empty, like she'd been holding her breath for so long that she'd forgotten how to exhale. What happens now? She asked. With me, I mean. What do I do? The question hung in the air. Grant looked at Thomas, who looked at Foster, who looked back at Lena. Whatever you want, Foster said simply. You're free, truly free. The land is yours. Your name is cleared. You can go back to that land and rebuild. Or you can sell it and start somewhere new. Or you can do nothing at all for a while and just breathe. I don't know how to do nothing. Then learn, Grant said. You've earned the right to rest. But Lena shook her head. No, I've earned the right to live, and living isn't the same as resting. She walked to the bed where her father's pocket watch sat on the nightstand. She picked it up, felt its familiar weight, traced the engraved initials with her thumb. I want to go back to the land. I want to see it. Stand on it. Feel the dirt under my feet and know it's mine. It's a 3-day ride, Grant cautioned. Your shoulder will hurt whether I'm here or there. I'd rather it hurt on land that belongs to me. Grant studied her face, saw determination there, saw her father's stubborn strength, saw a young woman who'd been stripped of everything and was now claiming it back piece by piece. Then we'll go, but we go slow, no more gunfights, no more running. We take our time. You think I'm letting you ride off alone after everything? Lena almost smiled. I can take care of myself now. You taught me that. I know you can, but maybe I don't want you to have to. Not anymore. Something passed between them then, understanding maybe, or recognition, or the beginning of something neither of them had words for yet. Thomas cleared his throat. I'll ride with you. Marcus Webb and his sons too. We'll help you get settled, start rebuilding. You don't have to do that. I know, but your father was my friend, and I failed him when it mattered. Let me do this. Let me help his daughter the way I should have helped him. Lena looked at the old man, saw genuine remorse there, saw a man trying to atone for his own failures. All right, but on one condition. Name it. You tell me about him, about my father before the fire, the good times. I need to remember him happy, not just broken. Thomas's eyes glistened. It would be my honor. They left Austin 2 days later, giving Lena time to heal enough for travel. The town threw them an impromptu celebration the night before. Farmers and shopkeepers and ordinary people who'd read the story and wanted to show their support. Someone played fiddle. Someone else brought whiskey. People danced in the street like they were celebrating the end of a war. In a way they were. Lena sat on the hotel porch watching it all with a mixture of wonder and discomfort. She wasn't used to being celebrated, wasn't used to people looking at her with admiration instead of pity or contempt. An older woman approached carrying a basket. Miss Cartwright, I baked you some bread for your journey, and some preserves. Fig, mostly. My husband says my fig preserves are the best in Texas. Lena took the basket, overwhelmed. Thank you. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. What you did standing up to Dalton that took courage most of us don't have. You reminded us that one person can make a difference, even when the odds are impossible. The woman patted Lena's hand and walked away, leaving her holding the basket and trying not to cry. Grant appeared beside her. You're becoming a legend. I don't want to be a legend. I just want to be normal. Normal's overrated. Besides, you were never going to be normal. Not after surviving what you survived. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to make you feel proud. Because you should be. Lena looked at him. Are you proud of what you did? Grant thought about it, about the auction, the gunfights, the long nights of doubt and fear, about standing up to Dalton when every instinct screamed at him to run. I'm proud I finally did the right thing, even if it took me 8 years to work up the courage. Better late than never. Your father used to say that, about everything, about planting crops, fixing fences, telling people he loved them. He said the only real failure was never trying at all. Lena smiled. I remember, he told me that the day before he died, said he was proud of me for trying to be strong even when I wanted to give up. I didn't understand what he meant then. I was just angry at him for drinking, for giving up on life. But now I think maybe he was trying to tell me something important. What's that? That strength isn't about never falling down, it's about getting back up again and again until you can't anymore. He was right, and you proved it. The celebration continued into the night. People told stories about Dalton's downfall, about the look on his face when they'd arrested him, about how justice had finally come to their county after so many years of corruption. But Lena found herself thinking about tomorrow, about the land, about what came next. Around midnight, she slipped away from the crowd and found Grant sitting alone on the edge of town, looking at the stars. Mind if I join you? Course not. She sat beside him, careful of her shoulder. The wound was healing well, but it still pulled if she moved wrong. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? Of going back, of seeing the land where my family died, of all the memories. We don't have to go, not if you're not ready. No, I need to go, but that doesn't mean I'm not scared. Grant nodded. Being scared isn't weakness, it's just being human. When were you scared during all of this? Every minute. From the moment I saw you on that auction block to right now sitting here with you, I've been terrified of failing you, of letting you down the way I let your family down. You didn't fail me. Not yet. But there's still time. Lena bumped his shoulder gently with hers. Stop that. Stop expecting to fail. You're not your father. You're not the man who stood by while my family burned. You're the man who bought my freedom, who protected me, who fought for me when no one else would. I only did what anyone should have done. But no one else did. That's what makes it matter. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Lena found herself thinking about the future for the first time in years. Not just surviving day to day, but actually imagining a life worth living. What will you do? She asked. After we get to the land. What do you mean? You gave up your ranch to help me. Where will you go? Grant hadn't thought about it, hadn't let himself think about it. The future had been such a foreign concept for so long. I don't know. Maybe I'll head north, find work on a ranch somewhere, start over. You could stay. The words hung between them heavy with meaning. Stay where? On the land. With me. Help me rebuild. Grant's heart did something complicated in his chest. Lena, I'm not asking you to marry me, she said quickly. I'm not even asking you to stay forever. I'm just saying you could stay for a while if you wanted. Why would you want that? After everything, because I trust you, because you're the only person who's ever kept their promises to me, and because... She struggled with the words, because I don't want to be alone, not anymore. Grant looked at her, really looked at her, saw the girl she'd been and the woman she was becoming, saw strength and vulnerability and hope all mixed together. I'd like that, he said finally, staying for a while. Lena smiled. Good, because I have no idea how to run a farm, and I suspect you do. Your father taught you some, before the fire. I was 9. I remember collecting eggs and feeding chickens. That's not exactly comprehensive agricultural knowledge. Then I'll teach you, same way I taught you to shoot. Will there be less bleeding this time? I'll do my best. They laughed then, really laughed. And for a moment, the weight of everything they'd been through lifted just enough to let light in. The journey back took 4 days instead of 3. They rode slowly, stopping often to rest Lena's shoulder, and let the horses graze. Thomas and Marcus Webb's family rode with them, along with Samuel, who'd insisted on coming despite his wounded leg. They were a strange caravan, wounded survivors and aging farmers heading toward land that had been stolen and reclaimed. But there was something right about it too, something circular, like the story was coming back to where it started, but different now, better. On the afternoon of the fourth day, they crested a hill and Lena saw it, her father's land. The house was gone, of course. Nothing left but a blackened foundation and the stone chimney standing like a grave marker. But the land itself was still there, the creek still running clear, the oak trees still standing, the rich bottomland still fertile and waiting. Lena dismounted slowly, walked toward the ruins of her childhood home. Grant followed a few steps behind, giving her space but staying close enough to catch her if she fell. She stopped at what used to be the front porch, closed her eyes, breathed. "I can hear them," she whispered. "My mother singing, Michael laughing, my father telling stories. Good memories, the best, before everything went wrong." She opened her eyes, looked at the land spreading out before her. "This is where I'll build, right here, not because I'm erasing what happened, but because I'm honoring it. This is where my family lived, so this is where I will live too." Grant nodded. "Then we'll build it strong, build it to last." Thomas approached, holding his hat in his hands. "Your father and I used to sit under that oak tree," he said, pointing. "We'd drink whiskey and complain about weather and politics and how our children were growing up too fast. He loved this land, not because it was valuable, but because it was his, because he'd built something here with his own hands." "Tell me more," Lena said. "Tell me everything." So Thomas did. He told her about the day Robert Cartwright had bought the land, about how he'd carried Sarah across the threshold of a half-built house, about the day Lena was born during a thunderstorm, about Michael taking his first steps in the yard. He told her about the good years before the war and the lies and the fire, about barbecues and barn raisings and community, about a time when neighbors helped neighbors and good men could build good lives. And as he talked, Lena felt something shift inside her. The anger and pain were still there, would probably always be there, but they weren't the only things anymore. There was room now for other feelings, for hope, for peace, for the possibility of joy. They camped that night on the land, building a fire where the house had once stood. Marcus Webb's sons hunted and brought back 2 rabbits. Someone else had bread. Thomas contributed whiskey he'd been saving. They ate and drank and told stories. Stories about Robert Cartwright, stories about the fight against Dalton, stories about their own lives and struggles and small victories. Lena sat close to the fire, listening. Grant sat beside her, and at some point, her hand found his. He squeezed gently. She squeezed back. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for all of this. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. Because you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" "A future, a real one, not just surviving, but actually living." Grant looked at her, at the firelight reflected in her eyes, at the peaceful expression on her face, at the way she looked finally at home. "You gave that to yourself," he said. "I just helped clear the path." "Then thank you for clearing the path." The days that followed blurred together in a rhythm of work and healing. They cleared the old foundation, salvaged what they could, began laying new stones for a new house. It was slow work. Lena's shoulder limited what she could do, and Grant wasn't as young as he used to be. But Thomas and Marcus and the others helped, and slowly, impossibly, a house began to take shape. Not a grand house, not a mansion, just a simple, solid structure with good bones and room to grow. Lena worked alongside the men, doing what she could with one arm. She refused to sit idle, refused to be treated like she was fragile. She'd survived too much to be fragile now. One afternoon, while Grant was inside framing windows, Lena walked to the creek. The same creek where her mother had done laundry, where she and Michael had played, where her father had taught her to fish. She knelt at the water's edge, pulled out her father's pocket watch. opened it and looked at the photograph inside, her family whole and happy and alive. "I did it, Papa," she whispered. "I got the land back. I'm building something here, something good, something you'd be proud of." The water burbled over stones, the only answer she'd ever get. But somehow it was enough. She stood, tucked the watch back in her pocket, and walked back to the construction site. Grant saw her coming and climbed down from the roof. "You all right?" "Better than all right. I'm home." He smiled. "Yes, you are." The house took 6 weeks to finish. 6 weeks of sawing and hammering and swearing when things didn't fit right. But on a bright October morning, they hammered in the last nail and stood back to admire their work. It wasn't perfect. The walls weren't quite straight, the windows were slightly uneven, the door stuck a little when you opened it. But it was solid. It was real. It was hers. Lena walked through the empty rooms, running her hands along the walls. This room would be the kitchen. This one the bedroom. This small one maybe a study where she could keep her father's books, if she could ever recover them. Or maybe new books, her own books, building her own library, her own life, her own memories. Grant found her standing in the main room, looking out the window at the land beyond. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about planting. In the spring, corn maybe, or wheat, something my father would have planted. Good land for it. And I'm thinking about getting some chickens, and maybe a milk cow, build a proper farm. You'll need help with all that." Lena turned to face him. "Will I?" Grant had been dreading this conversation, dreading the moment when he'd have to decide whether to stay or go, whether to keep paying penance for his father's sins or finally allow himself to move forward. "I was thinking," he said slowly, "if you still want me to stay, I'd like to. Not just to help, but because," he struggled for words, "because this feels right, being here with you, building something instead of hiding from the past. Are you sure you'd be giving up your freedom, your chance to start fresh somewhere new?" "I gave up my freedom the night I stood by and watched your family burn. I've been a prisoner of that choice ever since. But here now with you, this feels like freedom, real freedom, not running from guilt, but actually doing something good with what's left of my life." Lena's eyes glistened. "You could have died helping me, multiple times." "I know, and you still want to stay." "I still want to stay." She crossed the room and stood in front of him. With her good arm, she reached up and touched his weathered face. "Then stay, not as payment for the past, not as penance, but as a partner. Help me build this farm, this life, this future." Grant covered her hand with his. "I'd be honored." And Grant, "Yeah, eventually, when we're both ready, maybe we could build something else too." "Like what?" "Like a family, not now, not for a while, but someday. When the ghosts aren't so loud and the land is settled and we've both had time to heal." Grant's breath caught. "You'd want that with me." "You're a good man, Grant McCade. Took me a while to see it, but I see it now. You're not perfect. You've made terrible mistakes. But you're trying to be better, and that counts for something. That counts for everything. I'm 20 years older than you. I don't care. People will talk. Let them. I've survived worse than gossip." Grant pulled her into his arms, careful of her healing shoulder. She wrapped her good arm around him and rested her head against his chest. They stood like that for a long time in their imperfect house on stolen land, reclaimed two broken people, finding wholeness in each other. Outside, Thomas and the others were packing up to leave. They'd stayed to help build the house, but they had their own farms to tend, their own lives to return to. Lena and Grant walked outside to see them off. "You'll be all right here?" Thomas asked. "Just the two of you?" "We'll be fine," Lena said. "Better than fine." Thomas hugged her carefully. "Your father would be so proud of you, and so angry at me for not protecting you, but mostly proud. You made up for it by helping me fight, by standing with me when it mattered. Still doesn't erase what I failed to do. No, but it adds something new, something better. That's all any of us can do. Add something better to the story." Thomas nodded, wiped his eyes. You're wise beyond your years, child. I'm not a child anymore. No, you're not. You're a woman who owns her own land and her own destiny. That's a powerful thing. Marcus Webb shook Grant's hand. You take care of her. I will. And McCade, thank you for having the courage the rest of us lacked, for showing us it was possible to fight back. Wasn't courage, was just the right thing to do. Sometimes those are the same thing. They rode away, leaving Grant and Lena standing in front of their new house alone for the first time since the auction. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Birds called to each other in the oak trees. The creek bubbled peacefully. The land stretched out before them, full of possibility. Strange, Lena said. A month ago I had nothing, was worth $20 of debt. And now you own land, a house, and a future. We own it, both of us. I couldn't have done this without you. Grant thought about that, about how he'd walked into that barn expecting nothing and found everything, found purpose, found redemption, found a reason to keep living beyond just existing. I couldn't have done this without you either. You gave me something to fight for, something worth risking everything for. Lena leaned against him. What do we do now? Whatever we want. That's the beautiful part. We're free, really truly free. No one owns us, no one controls us. We decide what happens next. Then I decide we eat. I'm starving, Grant laughed. Practical as always. Someone has to be. They went inside their imperfect house and built a fire in the fireplace that Grant had constructed with his own hands. Lena cooked beans and bacon in a cast-iron skillet someone had given her. They ate sitting on the floor because they didn't have furniture yet. It was the best meal either of them had ever tasted. After dinner, they sat by the fire, not talking, just being. Comfortable in the silence, comfortable with each other. Grant, yeah, thank you for buying me that day, for paying $20 for something that should never have been for sale. Thank you for trusting me, eventually. Lena smiled. You earned it, slowly, painfully, but you earned it. I'll keep earning it, every day, for as long as you'll let me. Then I guess you'll be earning it for a very long time. The fire crackled. Outside, night settled over the land. Lena's land. Their land. In the morning, they'd start planting, start building, start living the life that had been stolen and reclaimed. But tonight, they simply sat together in the house they'd built, two survivors who'd found each other in the darkness and fought their way to the light. Grant looked at Lena's profile in the firelight, saw strength and hope and the future written on her face, saw the girl she'd been and the woman she'd become, saw everything he'd been fighting for sitting right beside him. You know what your father told me once, he said quietly. What? He said the measure of a man isn't in how he falls, but in how he gets back up. And the measure of a life isn't in the tragedies that happen, but in what we build from the ashes. Lena nodded. He was right. He usually was. We built something from the ashes, didn't we, you and me? We did. And we'll keep building every day, one choice at a time. Grant reached over and took her hand. She squeezed back, and in that simple gesture was everything. Forgiveness, trust, hope, love maybe, or the beginning of it. They sat like that until the fire burned low and the stars came out in full force, turning the Texas sky into something vast and beautiful and full of promise. And in that moment, sitting in their imperfect house on hard-won land, two broken people made whole by choice and courage and stubborn hope, they were finally home. Not the home they'd lost, not the home that had burned, but something new, something better, something they'd built together from nothing but determination and the refusal to give up. The rancher had paid $20 for a girl on an auction block, but in doing so, he'd bought them both a second chance at life and discovered that redemption isn't found in grand gestures, but in the daily choice to be better than you were yesterday, to fight for what's right even when the cost is high, and to build something beautiful from the ruins of the past.